Joining us this week is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. Representative Davids, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah, well, we love to start off with all of our guests just to let our listeners get to know them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you sort of run through your bio, sort of, what you were doing before you ran for Congress, your race, and sort of what you've been working on since then.
Okay, I will absolutely do that. I've got, 45 minutes here? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I'm not going to stop you.
Well, so a couple of things. First of all, I appreciate getting the chance to visit with you for a little bit today. I came in 2018 along with just a ton of people who, like me, didn't have traditional backgrounds. If you think about who usually runs for Congress and gets elected. I don't come from money or a political family or anything like that. I was raised by a single mom, and my mom served in the Army for 20 years, and then she was at the Postal Service for 20 years after that. And I'm a first-generation college student, former first-generation college student. My mom has since gotten her associate's, then bachelor's, and just got a master's in library sciences. So she's like, go get her. And I think that, when it came to what I was doing before I decided to run for Congress, I had really just kind of started learning a lot more about policy and that sort of thing. Full disclosure, I'm a recovering lawyer. So, I had worked my way through college. It took me 8 years to get my bachelor's degree, and then I ended up getting into Cornell for law school. And when I moved back home to Kansas after law school, I went and worked at a big law firm and did corporate transactional work. I did mergers and acquisitions and financings, and it turned out that wasn't that wasn't necessarily the best path for me. So I ended up getting the chance to do work with tribal communities and economic development and community development, and so I learned a lot about policy through that. But I also got the chance to spend a year doing a fellowship out here in D.C. and was at the Department of Transportation, and discovered I was an infrastructure nerd. And I think, like a lot of people, in 2017, 2018, we were just seeing what was going on with the politics of the country and the rhetoric and all of that. And we had a representative that I felt like did not reflect or represent the Kansas Third in a way that I thought was appropriate or fit the district. And I asked other people to run. There were no women in the race, too. And, I asked a number of people if they would run for Congress, which was kind of funny because I didn't do anything in politics before that. But I was like, I'll help you. And no one wanted to do it, which was, in hindsight, maybe I could have asked a few more questions of them why, but I'm kind of kidding, but I literally thought to myself, if I'm asking other people to do something about this, if I feel like something needs to be done, one of the cool things about living in the United States, for all the issues that we're trying to solve and address, we get to do something about it. If we don't like what our government's doing, if we want to see stuff done differently, there are things that we can do about it, including running for office. And so I decided to jump in the race, and our little hodgepodge group of people that had never run a congressional, we're over here Googling, how do you run for Congress? But seriously, though, we had a hodgepodge group of people sitting around a kitchen table, and we ended up being able to put together a campaign and ultimately took out a 4-term Republican incumbent in Kansas. And just, it's been like a fire hose since then.
No, I'm sure. And one of the things that I think you're notable for in these elections that you've had is you're regularly, on that list of frontline members in competitive races. Your district has always been pretty competitive, and yet you've been able to churn out pretty impressive victories term after term.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry.
Including 10 plus point victories in your last 3 cycles. And so what do you chalk that up to? What do you think makes you so successful in this district?
I think there's probably not just one or two things that I could point to. It's a bunch of stuff, but probably the biggest factors are, well, first of all, people can tell when you, I want the federal government to work better. I want people's lives to be less stressful. People are struggling, when you think about how many people right now are having to make decisions like, do I pay the electricity bill? Do I get my prescriptions? Do I pay the rent? Or they're doing that shuffle that sometimes you have to do because something's due on the 5th, something's due on the 12th. Too many people are dealing with that right now. And, the federal government can't solve everything, but there's absolutely stuff that we can be doing to make the federal government work better. And that is my job, and the way that I do that is by going out and talking to as many people as I can, whether we agree or disagree. The number of conversations I have that start off with, well, I didn't vote for you, and then there's something that either my office has been able to help with, or just in these times, there are plenty of people who just want an end to this chaos. And so I think that there's this thing about people want to know that someone is actually listening to them, that someone gives a shit. I mean, so many people literally just feel like no one in the government cares, that no one gives a shit. And it's not true, but for the people who feel like that and are really struggling, it matters for those of us in these kind of jobs to be showing up and listening and actually trying to take actions that help the people that we're supposed to be serving. So I think that's part of it. And then, no one's going to outwork me. For real. Very few people get the opportunity to do this job. There's so few people who ever get the chance to serve in Congress. And, while I'm here, I want to do the best possible job I can. And I've gotten the chance to work on some really cool stuff. I already said I'm an infrastructure nerd, so I got to work on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Billions of dollars are going to Kansas because of that, and I know some people might not get excited about fixing bridges, roads, getting internet, but that's the type of stuff that I get excited about because it makes a real difference in people's lives. So I think people can tell that's I'm not out here trying to be some kind of political star or any of that kind of stuff. I want to get stuff done for my state because I want my nieces and my friends' kids and the next generations of Kansans to get the opportunities that I got. Only with a solid community does someone who was raised by a single parent, graduated from public school, went to public universities. I got to go to an awesome law school. And then now I get to serve in Congress. Yes, I worked hard, but that's a lot about how much investment the communities in Kansas put into the next generations. And I want to be able to be part of making that happen for other people.
Now, you mentioned infrastructure, and we're not a policy-focused podcast. We care a lot more about the politics and election side. But I did want to ask and give you an opportunity to highlight some of the issues that you've been most focused on during your time in Congress, and what you've been working on the policy space.
Yeah, so I am on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, And I'm also on the agriculture committee, which I imagine we're going to get into the gerrymandering that happened before and that they're looking at trying to do again. But I got onto the agriculture committee after they gerrymandered the district last time, and I've had the chance to learn a ton about agriculture during my time in Congress. But when I got here, I can tell you the reason that I think investments in infrastructure and infrastructure policy, transportation and infrastructure policy is so cool is because if we get our policy and our investments right on infrastructure, it impacts every single aspect of our lives. It impacts how we get to and from everywhere we go, school, work, places of worship, even having fun. People should be able to have fun. It impacts how our businesses are able to conduct their operations. It impacts how well our schools are able to teach our kids. It impacts everything. And if we can get that right, then all the work that people are doing around affordable housing, around access to education, around access to healthcare, those things, it's just a much smoother process for them, because a hospital can't operate if they don't have access to clean water, access to the internet, and access to energy. And so the reason that I get excited about it is because it's really this foundational thing that can have ripple effects that are positive in so many other areas. And I already mentioned the bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act, which we got passed, is the type of thing that helps bring investments, especially to a state like Kansas, where we've got medium and small, medium, and large manufacturing. We've got a bunch of distribution centers, and the Kansas City metro area, which is where my district is at, we've got 5 major highways that intersect there. We're really, truly right smack dab in the middle of the country. We've got a major airport. We have an inland port. The Kansas and Missouri rivers meet there. We have the second largest rail hub in the country. So, this is the kind of stuff that, like, any goods that are coming from any other countries probably either roll through on rail or get driven across the state of Kansas. And that's everything from the East and West Coast to Canada to Mexico. So, I just realized how long I've been talking about that. Next question.
No, I love when people love the things that they're working on. So it's always great to hear when somebody is passionate about the things that they've worked on and past. But you did mention redistricting. That was one of the big reasons we wanted to have you on, because obviously you went through a redistricting process after the most recent census where, the Kansas legislature took a pretty normal shaped district and decided to gerrymander it to go after you. And then you won anyway, like I mentioned, reasonably comfortably. And now in the wake of the Trump administration's desire to super gerrymander any state they can get their hands on, there was the possibility of a new map in Kansas. So sort of take us through the lay of the land in Kansas, where it's been with this new gerrymander and the potential for a new map coming out this year.
Yeah, so I do think that, first of all, it was a real gerrymander in the kind of regular process. Every 10 years we do a census, and then redistricting happens after that. And what I found truly wild and egregious about the gerrymander that they did was that, one, they didn't even pretend it was anything other than they wanted to try to draw a map so that I couldn't win. They said it on TV. They were just like shouting it from the rooftops. Not that rooftops in Kansas get that high, but you know what I mean. They were specifically saying we can draw maps so that Sharice can't win. And I was not the only Kansan that was troubled by that. And I think that's part of why we saw the result that we saw. We also, the number of Kansans that came out to try to tell the legislature, don't split up our communities like this. You know, the Kansas City metro area is there. There's just this like deep history of the counties that are right there on the state line working together in a regional way. And so there was a lot of people who were mad, and not just Democrats. You know, it was independents. I had conservatives telling me, "Hey, this isn't right. I don't think they should be doing this." And they did it anyway. And we, of course, made sure that people knew that they did that. But that's not what I didn't run on an egregious thing that the state legislature did. I ran on all the work that I was able to accomplish for and the things that I was able to bring back to the district. And again, this stuff might sound kind of nerdy, but like helping get things like backup generators, helping the levee system that we have so that we don't have to deal with as much flooding as we deal with. Those kinds of things that have real life impacts on real people's lives are exactly the kinds of things that people want to know that their representative in Congress cares about. And I think that it made a huge difference. We ended up winning by a larger margin than in the previous cycle. And I think that it's an example of Kansans being pretty clear about not wanting a bunch of this extreme stuff that we're seeing happening. And so like right now we're seeing, you know, I really don't care how people try to characterize it. Redistricting mid-decade because the president told them to is extreme. It's not conservative, because conservative doesn't have to mean crazy. It's not in the best interest of Kansans. And frankly, the fact that we have so many people who are running for statewide offices who want a pat on the head or an endorsement from Donald Trump being willing to do stuff that's not in the best interest of Kansans is outrageous to me. Because, you know, I'm a Democrat in a state that, like, Donald Trump won the state of Kansas. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't mean that Kansans want our state legislature doing whatever Donald Trump tells them to do. We need our state legislature to be worried about Kansans. We need our state legislature to be worried about making sure we continue to have good public schools, to make sure that we continue to support people who need Medicaid, who need Medicare, who need access to clean water, access to the internet. And the fact that these guys are willing to take this on because Donald Trump told them to is outrageous. And it's the kind of stuff that Kansans push back on. Just like we pushed back when they tried to change the state constitution because they wanted to essentially ban access to abortion. And Kansans overwhelmingly said, no, we're not into this extreme stuff. So I think that if they continue down this path, that it's bad for the state, it's bad policy, and I think the people of Kansas are going to be really pissed about it.
Yeah, and in case folks don't know, in 2024, as you mentioned, Trump, of course, won Kansas, but Kamala Harris got more than 40% of the vote. And right now, there's one Democratic representative out of 4, which means it's about 25%. So it's already under, the percent that the Democratic candidate won. So it's crazy, the idea that they would want it to go to 0, basically.
Yeah.
Now,
and I think too, it's just, this whole situation that we're seeing right now with, the fact that, well, we didn't even talk about this. I used to do mixed martial arts. Like, I've had the crap kicked out of me a lot. Like, a lot. I've won fights too. I don't want it to sound. I'm just out here getting beat up. That's it.
Hopefully there were a few wins.
No, but I think that, like, when you're in the gym, it's like a lot of times it's the like loudest, like wildest people that are the most insecure or the most scared. And I feel like this redistricting thing is just like that. To me, first of all, if I had to cheat to win, I'd just be embarrassed. Like, what does it even mean if you have to cheat to win? They already tried to change the rules of the game, and or maybe we can call it the field lines or whatever, and I still won. The fact that they're revisiting this is just, I think, evidence of how scared they are, that they know they're going to lose the majority in the House because their policies are so unpopular. Like 79,000 Kansans are going to lose their health care because of the budget bill that the Republicans out here in D.C. passed last year. You know, if you can't stand in front of the constituents that you're supposed to be serving and say, here's what I supported and here's why I supported it, and you know, like, have them go to the ballot box on your record if you got to cheat to win, I just think it's embarrassing.
Yeah. Now, we did see in Indiana, there was a group of Republicans who were, you know, willing to stand up against some pretty extreme pressure from the White House in the state Senate. They prevented a new super gerrymander, I'm going to call it, in Indiana.
Okay.
And it seems like there's at least some Republicans in the Kansas state legislature who are similarly opposed to this, you know, new super gerrymander.
Yeah.
So it's sort of unclear right now if they'll actually be able to, you know, go forward with a map. Of course, because the current governor of Kansas, Laura Kelly, is a Democrat, of course, they would need 2/3 to override her veto. And they do have that in terms of if they had all the Republicans united.
They do.
But they may not have that for this map, so it may end up not happening. We, of course, don't know right now.
Yeah. Well, and I also, you know, I didn't get to Congress, like coming from where I'm coming from and getting to where I am now. That didn't happen because I just assumed things are going to work out in my favor. You know, I'm just, again, no one's going to outwork me. I stay diligent. I'm constantly going home and doing work in the district so people can see that they have a member of Congress who cares more about, I care more about making sure that I'm doing what I can to take care of Kansans, which, you know, I mean, I said, like, I'll work with anybody. I work on legislation that Donald Trump has signed into law. You know, this is my second time with him being president that I'm serving. You know, this term is the second term I'm serving with him as president. And if we can get a piece of legislation done that he's going to sign and it's going to be good for Kansas, I'm going to do that. And if I've got Republican colleagues who are pushing legislation or the president is pushing, and I also, like, I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican. If we have a president that's trying to do something that I think is bad policy for the state of Kansas, I'm going to push back on it. And that actually should be how all of us approach this, because every single district is different, every state is different, and sometimes you're going to agree and sometimes you're going to disagree. Where I see a problem is when we've got too many people who can't get themselves out of being either too beholden or too scared of the president because it's the same party as them, and do what's best for their state or for their district. And I think that I think that Kansans really appreciate that. There's actually more unaffiliated voters in Kansas than either party. So people want to know that their representative is there for them, not there for, you know, the president regardless of party, the leadership of whatever their party is. And I think Kansans want to know that at the end of the day, I'm here for Kansans.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we let you go, I want to ask you a little bit about, you know, Kansas Democrats more broadly as we look towards the midterms later this year. Now, Kansas is one of the states that has actually gotten a little bit bluer over the course of sort of the Trump era. When Trump first ran in 2016, he won Kansas by more than 20 points. In this most recent election in 2024, even though he did better nationally, He did worse in Kansas. He only won Kansas by about 16 points.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you chalk that up to? Is it the work of the Kansas Democrats? Is it Kansas voters who are maybe not as in tune with Trump as maybe previous Republicans? And how do you see 2026 going in your state?
Yeah. I feel like it's a combination of things. I can tell you that Democrats in Kansas have absolutely been putting in the work. You know, I mentioned the constitutional amendment fight that we had. That was in 2022, where we had some extreme folks in our state legislature who wanted to change the state constitution in an extreme way. And it wasn't just Democrats, it was a coalition of people that came together. But I can tell you that we were so much better prepared to have that fight at the ballot box, because we had gone through getting Laura Kelly elected, flipping the 3rd district seat. And I think that work and that progress that we've made in terms of organizing and getting out into communities and making sure people understand that, you know, as your 3rd district representative, whether you voted for me or not, I'm the representative for this district, and I'm going to be trying to do what's going to be best for education here, business here, infrastructure here at home in Kansas. And I would say that some of what I have seen over the years in Kansas is the number of people, and this happened in my first election too, was when we were out knocking on doors, when we were out doing, you know, like gatherings, like going into people's homes. And when I first started, I was literally like, I'm not even trying to raise money at this point. I mean, now I have to. We'll get to that in a bit. But I just literally was like, I'm just trying to talk to people so I can find out what it is that, you know, what do you think's working? What do you think's not working? And people respond to that. People want to know that you're going to be showing up. The number of people after the gerrymandering in 2022, there's 3 new full rural counties that are now part of the 3rd district. And there have been so many times where I have gone to places in some of the towns, some of the like businesses out there, various farms, whatnot, where people literally, I am the first federal elected that they've ever met. Not Democrat, the first person that's an elected federal person who they've ever met. Mm-hmm. And that is actually, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues that we have just kind of as a country. It's part of why people feel like no one gives a shit. And of course, I want people to have, you know, to take that pause and get to know me as their representative, not Sharice the Democrat, but Sharice the representative for the 3rd district. And, you know, I feel like Democrats have stronger policy because we're willing to argue with each other. You know, like we're willing to have those knockdown, drag out arguments and figure out what's the best policy. But, you know, right now on the other side of the aisle, what Trump says goes. And that's no way to lead a country. You know, we need to be figuring out what's going to be the best policy, and to do that, it's a messy process. You know, if this stuff was simple, it'd be solved already. But it's absolutely unacceptable to have an entire party that literally does everything that one person says, president or not. That's just not a good approach to governing a country this large and this diverse.
Absolutely. Well, Representative Davids, it's been great to have you on, but before we let you go, where can our listeners find you online, follow you, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, well, of course on the socials, I'm just at Sharice Davids on the various socials. And then I have a website, I feel like one of these days in the future, it's going to be like quaint when people say they have a website. I don't know how long it'll be, but I have a website, shariceforcongress.com. And, if you go to the website, of course, if folks want to kick over a little bit of support, I'll take it. We're in a pretty big fight in Kansas. And also, if you're in Kansas or looking to come to Kansas, you can also sign up to volunteer to help us make sure that we just keep that momentum up that you mentioned. Kansas is trending in a good direction in terms of, we've got a Democratic governor right now. We picked up this 3rd district, and we've got a lot of really cool stuff going on out there.
Well, great. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.